Thank you and welcome everyone. We appreciate you taking time to join us tonight, whether you're here in the audience or online tuning in. Senator Cook and I had some interesting discussions over the past little while, and this is one of the ideas we come up with. The way we can engage, we can help you engage with us by helping you understand more about the concepts and what's going on, and specifically this issue of taxes is one. It's very dynamic, and we wanted to help you do it so you could help us engage as we help you engage. So to begin with tonight, we have a tradition in the Senate where we begin with a prayer and a pledge. And we've asked Commissioner Christensen to give our prayer tonight, and then Brian Reed will lead us in the pledge. And let's proceed to that point. Yeah, stand up.
Our kind and gracious Heavenly Father, we come together tonight and like to give Thee thanks for the blessings that we have, the freedom that we have to live in a country that we can express ourselves freely and openly, that we can not be subject to some of the wars and turmoil that we're seeing around the world now. Please bless us with the wisdom as leaders in our relative offices, that we will be able to be guided and directed to govern with correct principles. And we ask for a blessing of peace in a time of war and conflict, that those who are harming their neighbors, that they will have their hearts softened, and the war will be subdued. We ask that we be watched over as we travel to and from our duties, and we say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Reed. We're coming to you and visiting with you tonight from the college campus at the College of Eastern Idaho, and I'd like to thank President Rick Amon, who is here joining us tonight, for graciously allowing us to meet here and use the facility. So thank you, President. As we start tonight, it's probably appropriate that we introduce those who are here, and we'd like to start. Penny, if you wouldn't mind, just introduce who you are and a little bit about what you do.
Okay, I am the elected Bonneville County Clerk. I do a lot of different things, but our discussion tonight is related to budget. Do you want me to start there, or do you want to just stop?
Sure, just tax primarily.
Okay.
Anything to do with that.
Okay, I didn't know if you wanted to go in a sequence, but I can tell you my part.
Yeah, we're just introducing.
Just introducing. Penny Manning, Bonneville County Clerk.
Art Kent, Bonneville County Treasurer.
And I'm Brian Reed, Bonneville County Commissioner.
And Dave Lent, District 33, Idaho Senate.
Kevin Cook, District 30, Idaho Senate.
Roger Christensen, Bonneville County Commissioner.
John Walker, Bonneville County Commissioner.
Dustin Barron, Bonneville County Chief Deputy Assessor.
Great, well, thank you all for being here. We thought this might be a great way to have this discussion, have the experts here that can answer questions and really help our constituents understand this thing that's kind of a black box, which is how the tax work in our state and in our county specifically. So let's start at the beginning and maybe just walk through that process. Yeah. Thanks, Gavin. We're going to start at the beginning and show you a video that really kind of outlines the fundamentals of how this process works, and then each of us will have an opportunity to discuss our particular aspects of that with you. So we're ready for the video.
Many of us pay property taxes, but how many of us understand the actual process of how we get from a property tax assessment to a property tax notice? We are going to break down how Idaho property taxes work for an entire calendar year. Assessment notices, budget notices, and tax notices can be confusing. The county assessor kicks off the process by assessing property at market value, which is required by state law. The The value is determined by an appraisal process, which includes analyzing construction costs, reviewing recent sales data, and possibly a personal visit to the property. The market value as of January 1st is then set as the current market value of the parcel. Any allowed exemptions are then deducted from the market value to arrive at a taxable market value. Assessment notices are sent out no later than the first Monday of June each year. A property owner has the right to appeal their assessment to their local Board of County Commissioners, who ultimately have responsibility for equalizing property values. Local governments provide essential services like public safety, operating water and sewer systems, elementary and secondary education, administering the judiciary system, and highway maintenance. Some local governments, like counties and schools, provide statutory services on behalf of the state of Idaho, while others provide the services expected by their residents. Local governments prioritize budgeting non-property tax revenues whenever possible. Unfortunately, these revenues fall short of funding some essential services. To bridge the gap, local governments levy property taxes. In some districts, property taxes make up a small percentage of the district's overall budget, while in other districts, most revenues come from property taxes. During the spring and summer, local governments begin the process of setting their budgets for the coming fiscal year. Preliminary budgets estimate the amount of money necessary to carry out the responsibilities of the taxing district. All local government services are funded through a variety of revenue sources, including non-property tax sources such as sales tax, payment in lieu of taxes, fees for service, property tax replacement, and cash reserves in addition to property taxes. While non-property tax revenues help fund local government services, this is not enough to cover the entire cost. To make up the difference, local governments are authorized to levy a property tax. So let's take a quick look at how property tax budgets in Idaho are calculated. Each year, a taxing district may increase its base property tax budget by up to 3% of the highest property tax budget from the last 3 years. This 3% allowance is intended to cover cost increases of existing services. Sometimes a taxing district chooses not to budget the full amount of property taxes allowed by law. In such cases, the taxing district may choose to reserve the amount not budgeted for use in future budget years. This creates reserved budget authority, known as foregone property taxes. In addition to a 3% base property tax budget increase, local taxing districts are also allowed to increase their budget to account for new growth and development. This increases overall property tax budget capacity. This increase in property tax budget capacity is known as new construction. In order to calculate new construction, the taxing district calculates a preliminary levy rate based on their anticipated base property tax budget. The preliminary levy rate is multiplied by 90% of the taxable value of new development within the taxing district. This amount is known as new construction. In subsequent years, a taxing district may choose to budget no more than 1% of their total property tax budget from previously reserved foregone property taxes. In addition to the allowable 1% base property tax budget increase from foregone, a taxing district may budget up to an additional 3% foregone for one-time capital projects such as roads, bridges, and fire trucks. Foregone property taxes budgeted for a capital project are not included in the base property tax budget. To calculate a taxing district's total property tax budget capacity, a taxing district adds the following: the prior year property tax budget, plus 3% base property tax budget growth, plus new construction, plus 1% base property tax growth from available foregone for a maximum base property tax budget increase of 9%. While some taxing districts can increase their property tax budget by up to 9%, most taxing districts see annual property tax budget increases of 3 to 5%. Once the preliminary budget is set, the taxing district provides the public notice to taxpayers about the district's annual budget hearing. The notice includes the time and place of the hearing, as well as the proposed expenditures and revenues. It will also include a statement of the estimated revenue from property taxes, as well as other revenue sources the district may have. At the budget hearing, any interested person may appear and show cause about why the proposed budget should or should not be adopted. After public comment, the taxing district approves its final budget. The final approved budget includes a summary of revenues and fund level expenses. The adopted budgets from every taxing district are then presented to the Board of County Commissioners of the respective counties for budget and levy certification. This must be done no later than the second Monday in September. The taxing district certifies to the county commissioners the total amount required in property tax from each property within their district. As part of the certification process, levy rates are calculated by dividing the approved property tax budget by the total taxable market value of all property within the taxing district. The certified levy rate is used to determine the amount of property taxes you owe the taxing district. The levy rate is multiplied by your assessed taxable value, which results in the amount of taxes due to the taxing district. So far, we've been looking at this from a high level. Now it's time to drill down to how a property is actually taxed. Let's take a look at this from a homeowner's perspective. The taxable value of your home is multiplied by the certified levy rate. This determines how much you owe in property taxes. If the taxing district's budget increased 6.8%, why did your taxes increase more than 6.8%? The answer is due to tax shifting. There are two types of tax shifts: an exemption-driven shift and a market-driven shift. Anytime a class of property is exempted from taxation, the property taxes that would have been paid by those property owners shift to all other property taxpayers in the district. As an example, increasing the homeowner's exemption shifts taxes away from owner-occupied residential properties to commercial, agricultural, and rental properties. Alternatively, if a class of commercial property were to receive an exemption, taxes would shift away from the exempted class of commercial property and onto residential and agricultural properties. Tax shifts also occur due to market fluctuations. A market-based tax shift occurs when valuations of one property class increase to a higher rate than the other class of property. In a hot real estate market, residential property values increase at a higher rate than commercial and agricultural properties, resulting in a tax shift from agricultural and commercial properties onto residential properties. Alternatively, during a recession, the opposite may occur. Residential properties may decrease in value at a higher rate than the other class of property. This results in a tax shift from residential properties to commercial and agricultural properties. Market-based tax shifts also occur when one class of property is replaced by another class of property. For example, in areas experiencing high growth, agricultural parcels are rapidly being converted to residential and commercial parcels, thus reducing the value of agricultural property on the tax rolls and increasing the value of residential and commercial properties. In November, property owners will receive their property tax notices. Each county treasurer issues a consolidated property tax bill on behalf of the taxing districts within their county. The property tax notice also includes a link to the county website where taxpayers can find information regarding the initiation and expiration dates of any bonds and voter-approved levies within the county. The final step in the property tax year comes when property taxes are due on or before December 20th. Once taxes are collected, the county clerk distributes property taxes to eligible taxing districts. Local taxing districts use property taxes to provide essential local government services like ambulance services, K-12 education, public safety, roads, bridges, operating courts, just to name a few. Come January 1st, the process repeats. We hope this helps demystify a year in the life of how property taxes are levied in Idaho.
Thank you. I know that was a lot of information. So what Senator Cook and I would like to do is, if you will email us, we will send that link to you on YouTube so that you can spend a little time digesting that. It goes pretty fast, but it's very packed, and you can unpack it when you have some time and kind of think about it. I'd also like to point out that City Councilman Jim Francis is here with us tonight, as well as Mayor Casper has joined us. So welcome tonight. We appreciate you being here. Okay, at this time, what we'd like to do is really start the discussion off, and we've asked our senior county commissioner, Roger Christensen, to kind of open that up for us, and then we'll feed into the rest of the discussion from there.
I thought first we'd take a quiz. How many can answer every element in the cycle of that property taxes?
We'll hand those quizzes
Some
out.
of you guys should. After that. No, and it is quite complicated. We thought the simplest way to do it, and that our desire is to leave enough time to have specific questions, but have each officer, elected officer, we'll kind of go in rotation of the cycle where it starts. and talk about the specific thing. That was very descriptive and very complete. Just hard to gather in all at once, but maybe give a little bit of perspective from somebody who's been doing it. The beginning of the property tax cycle, as it pointed out, was the assessment. And so Dustin Barron, Blake Wheeler had a conflict tonight, so Dustin's been his chief deputy appraiser for
A little over 4 years, right?
4 years, but 19 years in there, so he has a lot of knowledge about assessment. And then the parts that comes from there on Board of Equalization, Commissioner Walker will kind of give us a little bit of input on that. And then the next point of that goes to the budgeting and then sending out the tax notices. So we'll go there and I guess they covered a lot of the stuff I'm guessing you're gonna cover, but if you just want to add to it, then we get to questions. Okay, Dustin?
Sounds good. So as Commissioner Christensen indicated, it starts at the value. You know, in the assessor's office, we're tasked with determining that value. We do that several different ways depending on the type of property that we're valuing. Majority of them are going to be residential. So here in the state of Idaho, we're actually required to be at market value on residential homes. So essentially, whatever your home would sell for, that's what we're required to have the value at. To come to that value and determine that market, we're actually looking at actual sales of homes here in the county. We're setting that lien date as of January 1. The taxpayers may get that first assessment notice from our office in June, but we're essentially saying as of January 1 of that year, here is your value based on the market. To come to that value, we're using sales from the previous year. We're looking at, to get this sales information, we've got a few different ways that we acquire that information. One, we go by MLS listings if we have those available to us. We also send out surveys to the homeowners as they purchase properties to try to get that sales information. We collect all that, input it into our system, and essentially track all of that sales data. That's what we use when we're determining the market value on residential homes. When we're actually building our inventory essentially of the home, we can determine the grade, the condition, the inventory, the bedrooms, the baths, the square footage, things like that. We'll do physical inspections of the home. The state actually requires that we reappraise, physically inspect 20% of the county each year. So if you own a home here in the county, you've probably seen us out there or seen a letter from us. You know, we try to get out there every 5 years to do that 20% of the county each year. Try to get into the homes as much as possible to make sure and verify that the information that we have is correct. If we've been in the home relatively recently, you may just receive a survey from us. We generally don't like to, nobody wants a stranger coming through their home. So if we can, you know, we've got relatively accurate information and up-to-date information, you may just get a survey to verify that there have been no changes or to see what changes have been made in the previous 5 years since we last inspected the home. Again, this is kind of a great way for us to make sure that we're staying current and that we're keeping current with the information on the home. The values will change every year. It's not, you know, even though we're only walking or physically inspecting the home every 5 years, I'm sure you've noticed with the market, the way that's gone, the values will actually fluctuate every year. Even though we're only physically out there in every individual area, looking at individually homes every 5 years to you know, inspect the homes, your value would fluctuate every single year based on several things. Obviously, the number one thing that probably most people notice is that market increase or market decrease. You know, it fluctuates with how the market has been. So obviously in this area, the values have gone up the past couple of years as the market has increased. We're not determining what homes are selling for. You know, I think there's a common misconception that we're allowing the homes to sell for a certain amount. And I think that comes from, you know, a fee appraiser will set that value for a bank to determine whether they can loan on it. In the assessor's office, we're not. We're just basically interpreting the market based on sales. So while we're not setting the market, we are using those sales to determine the market. So we will go through look at those sales. So the other thing, so obviously the market's gonna change in value every year. Other things are gonna be improvements that you've made to your home. If you're making improvements in between your 5 years, say you build a new garage and you take a permit out, we can track that progress, and once that garage is complete or that shed is complete or you finished your basement finish, whatever it may be, even if that happens, within that 5-year cycle, we will pick up those additions and those improvements as they've been completed and as we see them. So again, that can be an additional increase in your value on top of a market increase. And then the other instance that you might see a value increase on top of improvements or market increases, we've just been able to get more accurate information. Maybe, prior to, maybe we had a new aerial flight that we were able to see that there was a deck that we hadn't picked up prior, or maybe through an online listing of a home for sale, we discovered that the home has a basement finish. We haven't previously had that picked up. So, if we're able in any way to discover that there is more accurate information, we'll make those corrections throughout the year. So several different ways that you can see the value increase. Ultimately, we're just trying to arrive at the most accurate value that we can. We always want to try to be placing our value as close to what the true market value is, what you could sell your home for. That's what we want our value to be. And the best way we can do that is to be as accurate as we can. Whether it's for you or your neighbor, we want to ensure that the value is as accurate as it can be. We want to ensure that we're picking up everything, grading things, got accurate square footage and everything like that as best as we can to be as accurate as we can be. In addition to, so that kind of covers how we're tracking and placing value on residential homes. Commercial land is a little bit different. Commercial improvements are a little bit different. We use, we're using actually three approaches to value on that. We are using the market. We're also using the cost, so essentially what the cost of construction is, and then depreciating it out. And then we're also using rents, incomes, on the property, and weighing those three different values to come up to our value for our commercial. We value farmland in the county. The way we determine farmland is based, at least in Bonneville County, there's a couple different ways we can do it. In the state of Idaho, Bonneville County has chosen a way that we're actually basing our values on, the use of the land, what the crop is, basically what you're making off the crop, what goes into producing that crop, and what that commodity is coming in at, what it's selling for. And we'll go through, we update these, similarly to residential, you're gonna see increases and decreases on farmland as well, just based on our most current information. We send surveys every year to try to get current costs for, the product that goes into producing those, the yields. And we also send surveys out to see what the yields are in every area around the county. And it will vary depending on what area of the county you're in and the yields that you're receiving. Once we've determined the value, we're also tasked with placing the exemptions. So there's a handful of exemptions. Probably the one that most homeowners are familiar with is the homeowners exemption. If you're primary residence here in Idaho, well, if you're primary residence anywhere, there's a homeowners exemption that you qualify. It's essentially taking your value and deducting half of your value up to $125,000, and then that leaves the remainder that is your actual taxable value. So if your home is worth $300,000, we would deduct $125,000 and you're only being taxed on $175,000. And again, that's for your primary residence. So if you have a home here in the county and that's your primary residence, you can qualify for that homeowner's exemption. Another one that a lot of people are familiar with is the property tax reduction program. Might be more familiar if it was once called the circuit breaker program. It's for the elderly, that's disabled, widows, widowers, and it is based on income. So, it's a great program. It can actually deduct a portion of your taxes, depending on how much or where you qualify on that income. Lastly, we do appraise all the new construction. We're constantly monitoring that and tracking the progress on that. Homes with new construction homes are picked up based on when they're occupied here in the state of Idaho. The land is there as of January, and so it's valued for the full year. But your new construction, if you move in June, you're only being valued on that that 6 months that the home was occupied. Using the same methods, we're using construction costs to determine, local construction costs to determine the value. And again, we're using market sales to determine what that value may be.
Thanks, Dustin. Are you getting pretty close?
Yeah, that's basically it as far as values, sorry.
Thanks. Thanks, we appreciate that. Is there any specific questions for Dustin at this time? Okay. Remember Facebook, there's a way to ask questions on Facebook as well. So Commissioner Christensen, you want to continue? Okay.
We're gonna have John do, because all three commissioners have
Okay.
the same duty.
Thank you, Senator. Pretty simple. If you disagree with how your property is valued by the assessor's office, you have the right to question that. That comes before the commissioners and the Board of Equalization, in which we said is a quasi-judicial setting and hear what you have to say, hear what the assessor has to say, how they came up with the assessment. And it's all very fact-based and sometimes it's fun. I mean it sarcastically, because it's a challenge but it is everyone's right, and there's some individuals that come every year and challenge the value of their properties. And that's certainly our right as individuals to do that. But that's pretty much the end of that process. And it goes to the clerk.
Okay.
All right, I'm gonna try to simplify mine too. So what happens is once the assessor has done his job, I take the valuations for the new construction of the property, and that's when I start working with the taxing districts. I work with them to get their budget notices in the newspaper. I work with them to get the forms that they need. It is up to them to set the budget they want for the year, and then I take the numbers that they have set, put it against a formula that is established by our legislators and enforced by the State Tax Commission. We set the levy rates. We make sure those levy rates don't exceed the maximum levy rate that they are allowed to have by law. And then we get all those taxing districts ready to receive their money, and then we distribute that money when it comes in to us from the state. Simple?
Great. Thank you.
Maybe I could add one thing to that, because because, the Board of Commissioners do the same thing as the other taxing entities in setting a budget, that we have to go to the clerk before. One of the biggest misperceptions we have, since you can see the process of assessing and sending out the notices and collecting with the county, they think that we have complete control over whether property taxes go up or down. If you look at your tax notice, you'll see line by line all of the different entities that Penny's talking about and what that collection that she's required by statute to collect and send to that entity. And that's the total. So you may live in one area and your taxes will be a much higher percentage than another area because you don't have as many taxing districts in there. But one of the functions of the commissioners is to do the same thing as the other governing bodies do on that. And
So, a question here. So we've got the assessor has assessed the property. When do I, as a property owner, first hear what that assessment is? Is that coming from Penny's office?
so that's what Dustin pointed out. They mail out usually in June. And you see that, and if the citizens know on there, it gives them a time that they can appeal to the Board of Equalization. If you don't appeal, then we can't hear it. Quasi-judicial means like a judge. And so we have to treat them, as it were a court hearing on that. So if you miss the deadline, there's not much we can do, because then we don't have the authority to do it. Once we hear that, if they don't agree with us, they can take it to the district court. And then I think, Mark, yours is fairly simple. You're at the end of the line.
Right, so I'm next. So once the levy's been established and approved by the state, then we take those numbers, and we have a data processing department that does that in Bonneville County. And so we apply that levy to the individual values the values of the individual properties. So we create the tax statement and then mail them out, it's just as simple as that. And then we collect the property tax. December 20th and June 20th are the due dates. Technically, they're due in full December. But but the law provides that if you pay at least half of it, there's a grace period up until June to pay the balance. It's important to remember that that's just a grace period. And technically, they're due in full December 20th. So when people come in, we collect the tax. And then once a month, we turn the taxes that we've collected over to the clerk's office. And then, as Penny mentioned, it distributes it to the various taxing districts. So I'm the tax collector.
That hated tax collector.
That's right.
All right, Commissioner Reed.
If he's got anything to add on this.
Well, I guess I might just add that, because you were asking about the responsibilities of each elected office, and I think that the commissioner's primary responsibility is to protect the money from the taxpayer. This is the way I see it, in two ways. First, we review all of the budgets. All of the budgets for the county have to be reviewed and approved through the commissioner's office. And so in that way, we ensure that the budgets are adequate to provide the proper level of service for all county residents, but that they are not excessive in a way that a taxpayer may be paying more than is necessary to run that proper level of service. So along with being the Board of Equalization, I think the commissioner's primary responsibility is just to ensure those taxpayer dollars are correct and are protected.
Anything else?
I hope there's some questions.
We have some questions out there from anybody? Anybody on live? If you want to put a comment out there, you're certainly welcome to.
Oh, it's just a clarification. So people talk about, well, my mill rate or whatever. Is mill rate the same as the levy rate? Are those interchangeable?
Mill levy rate.
Is the mill rate the same as?
Repeat the question.
Yeah. If you'll repeat the question.
I'm a little confused by your question. Mill rate?
Yeah, I hear people talk about, well, we gotta pay so many mills on $1,000 of value of our house. Is that,
Okay.
that's basically the levy rate?
His question is the mill rate is the same as the levy rate. I think they refer to it that way just simply because the levy rate is based on, well, a lot of times it's determined per 100,000 people. When they ask me for what amount do I pay on my home, I can tell you per 100,000 how much it is. And so that's usually when they consider the mill levy rate, they're just asking
Okay.
a percentage.
Do the homeowner exemption increase? Because right now we're seeing huge increases in our property values. So I'm assuming we're seeing taxes going up. At some point, do they re-look at those homeowners exemptions?
I hate to do this to our legislators, but they're set by the legislature. And I think right now it's set at 125,000. And I don't know how often you guys review those. I know they're always a topic. But as of now, it's 50% up to 125,000. So anything over that is taxed at 100%. And I don't know, there's been some talk of changing that this year.
Last year.
Last year. 100.
Yeah, from 100 to 125, and that's a interesting discussion, that homeowner's exemption. And as we get in a few minutes, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the new ideas that's being worked in Boise concerning property tax, and we'll talk a little bit about homeowner's exemption then. So I did see that there was another question.
I was going to get background on that question.
Oh, okay. Would you like to give background?
Sure. So I can't remember what year the homeowner exemption was enacted, but for many years it was indexed to inflation or some some kind of a multiplier. I'm not sure if it was a consumer price index or something else. And Jeff, you might know this, I don't. But in 2016, it was capped because it creeped up, right? It always operated, when this modern version was enacted, that it would be, up to the, once it hit the 50% of the value of your property, then I can't even talk. Anyway, once it hit 50% of the value of your property, that was how it maxed out. But it was creeping up over time, and so in 2016, it was capped at $100,000. And then last year, it was lifted to 125. Folks say that we had so much inflation between 2016 and last year that if it had continued to index instead of being capped and then raised to 125, it would have been well over 125, but I don't remember what that number was. And so some will say between 2016 and last year when it was capped and no, it wasn't growing any larger, that's when we saw a shift, and it's kind of described in the video. We saw a shift where more of the taxation was then coming from homes because they weren't receiving the benefit of that exemption. But others will argue, and I think former Senator Morgan was one who would argue that he didn't understand why we were offering that exemption in the first place. He said because whatever shift, he says, which is it's just leaning back toward normal because everybody should just pay what their property value is worth. And in fact, when you have a homeowner's exemption, you are automatically saying that you legislatively or as a matter of policy prefer to tax homes at a lesser rate than businesses and farms and industry and et cetera. And so there is a lot of, I guess, philosophy that will go into whether or not you want an exemption, and if you want that exemption to be small or large, if you want it to grow at a certain rate to always be steady and static, or if you don't want one at all. It speaks to your philosophy. I think that the reason they exist is because property taxes always have that effect on the low-income folks or the fixed-income folks that melt people's hearts when it comes to what kind of policy should be made. Oh, a man's home is his castle. We'll give him or her this kind of a little break here. And then that break can sometimes become unmanageable or get out of control. And I think that's one of the reasons why someone thought, this is growing at a crazy rate, let's have it. So it is an interesting policy discussion. And as you follow it, you'll follow different people's perspectives and opinions. And it's math plus matters at the heart and philosophy, political philosophy.
So sometimes you might hear the term circuit breaker as it relates to tax. A circuit breaker is a tax break, if you will, for people under certain circumstances, income levels. There's 5 or 6 criteria there, but it's primarily targeted at those who are fixed income, least likely to be able to afford the taxes. And really what that's about is trying to keep them from losing and being taxed out of their homes. So you give them, but again, as it was just mentioned, that becomes a tax shift. So still from a budgetary point of view, the taxes still have to be, so we would consider that a shift as well from one taxpayer to another one. I believe there was another question.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to say real quick, having the opportunity to serve on the House Revenue Taxation Committee, I concur with everything that the mayor graciously said. I agree with everything she said.
All right, well, thank you. Other questions or comments?
I'd like to make one comment on that question that the gentleman asked, because you mentioned with the home values going up, property values going up, tax taxes would go up. That's a bit of a misnomer. If the system is working correctly, it shouldn't, taxes are not based on a rising home value. Taxes are based on budgets, a county budget, city budget, each tax district's budget. And as home values or other property values go up, then the levy rate should fluctuate up or down to meet the budget. So what the critical component is the budget that is set by that taxing district, more so than the value of your home, is how it has been hard on residential properties as of late, is because their value is increased at a greater percentage than commercial property, and farm values. And so that has caused this tax shift to put a heavier load on residential properties. And it's felt like, their value has been increasing, and so that's caused the taxes. What's really caused the taxes, they've been increasing at a greater percentage than the other two tax components. But it's really important to remember that it's the budget that drives that tax. And so that's why it's important to be involved in the budget process, to attend those budget hearings when you have the opportunity to each taxing district that you live in.
So Brian said is entirely correct. There's another way to put it, just in simplistic terms. Assuming everything is equal, supposing, and I'll just kind of pick on the assessor's office, that they decided to double everybody's value. Well, all that does is take the levy and divide it in half, because we still collect the same dollars. As Brian said, it's the budget that drives it. So if everybody's home and business, if their value doubled, it'd still pay the same amount of tax. Consequently, if you cut everybody's value in half, so, $1 million homes are 500, $500,000 homes are 50,000, it still pays the same amount of tax, again, all else being equal, because it just doubles the levy. It's the dollars that we need to collect. So the value of the property is not necessarily directly correlated with the tax that you pay. Exactly.
I do think it's important to clarify that that would be a market-driven increase or decrease in the value. Obviously, if you're adding improvements to the home, you add a big shop to your house, that value increase isn't going to be a market increase, and you will see a difference in your taxes there. But I agree, essentially, if your value increase or decrease is simply following the market, theoretically, your tax value or your tax amount shouldn't change significantly unless that budget changes.
Well, just to be clear, let's talk in general terms, all else being equal. Clearly, there's ups and downs with individual properties, so.
And could I add one clarification on that? I think it was House Bill 349 last year.
The tax bill.
389.
389.
Legislature kind of rewrote. Our budgets are driven by what we're allowed to collect are in the statute. This we felt like was a good compromise to kind of keep some control of spending by government agencies from doubling if they had the ability to do it. And so it put kind of a cap on it to where you can collect up to a certain amount. And then it's our responsibility to do the best we can with the resources we've got to provide the services. And sometimes that's difficult, sometimes it takes hard choices. But I think the result of the first year of that is statewide, looking at Somerset Briggs numbers, the counties increased 3% in the amount that they budgeted for statewide. That means if the values are going way up, that levy is going to have to come down, at least the county levy come down. And that meant that they collectively as a whole did not take everything that they were allowed to. Schools aren't even bound by that, so if the values go up and they have supplemental levies, they go up, can go up by the amount of the increase, which you pointed out. Because that levy rate, if it's kept the same, it goes up 20%, goes up 20%. I think cities went up 6 or 7%, and then you have a bunch of other smaller districts. But that's how we operate, is under the guidance and the rules that the legislature sets. Sometimes we're not happy with it, but I think it's our responsibility, like Commissioner Reed said, as caretakers of the citizens' dollars, to make sure those are spent wisely and we give them the best service we can with what we got.
If I can, Senators, I think a different way to perhaps look at the increase in budget relative to property values in homes is to compare the increase in property values to the actual cost of living. And we've seen our property values skyrocket. We've seen our cost of living increase at about half that rate, a little less than half that rate, depending on whose index you look at. And then, so if you kind of mark those two lines on a graph, and then you mark the budget increase for the cities and counties, the school districts, the fire district, the cemetery district, all the other taxing districts, those numbers are well below half of the increase line for the cost of living. And that would indicate that the individuals that are responsible for those taxing districts are doing a pretty good job, because their increase is less than half the cost of living increase, which is in our current market, less than the market value increase on properties. And also we provided a handout which shows what counties are required legislatively by law to do with the tax dollars that we collect. It's not a money-making business, and it's our responsibility to hold as close to that line as possible and not go into the red, which is also not the right thing to do. And for those online, we'll make this available online as well, either through Facebook or on our webpage.
Any other questions?
Well, it's sort of a question, and I need to be taught on this, but in going through budgets for 4 years, I've come to a thought in my head of how I use the words. So when I use the word levy, I'm thinking about the dollar amount the city is asking for its needed budget, dollars. When I think of levy rate, I think of that's the rate, which I call the mill levy thing, but the rate that the taxpayer pays, so that's a percentage. So as we set our levy in dollar amount, it's submitted to penny, right? But the rate is set when you look at the total assessed value for the city of Idaho Falls or the Bonneville County, as that total value goes up, our rate is going to go down to meet that levy. So I use the word levy when I'm thinking about dollars in our budget that we're asking for, or we've decided our budget fits and we get reviewed and we're gonna be within parameters, but the rate goes down if the value in the city overall has gone up. Am I thinking, okay, if I try to separate the word levy from the word levy rate?
That would be completely accurate if the budget stayed the same. If the budget stayed the same,
Right.
the values go up, the levy stays the same, the levy rate drops because the value went up.
Right, so I'm just kind of asking, am I using those words in a way that would be acceptable,
Maybe
or
to,
understandable to
maybe to
Mark
simplify
and
it,
Dustin?
maybe to simplify it, Penny's job is the easiest. I mean, it's basically a mathematics formula. You set your budget, which you guys have the right to do at $1 million. She calculates the levy rate against the overall value to collect $1 million. So the sum equals that multiplying factor, and she's a lot smarter than I am in math, so she goes through and whips those out. And that's what establishes the levy rate against the value of your own.
Right, and so what I'm asking is, if we all use the word levy and the word levy rate in the same way, it would help the public, in my view.
Okay, Jim, I wouldn't necessarily call it the levy because the budget that you set includes all kinds of things, revenues from other sources other than just simply the money that's collected. And so you have to be aware that the whole budget, which includes revenues and that kind of thing from all your sources, is applied against that levy rate. It's not just the levied amount of money that's applied, it's the whole budget. Does that make sense?
But the rate is a percentage.
The levy rate is a percentage attached to the assessment and the overall budget. Okay?
Told you she was smart.
Okay, any other questions we have out there?
Yeah, I have a question. So like where we're one of the fastest, if not fastest, growing states in the nation right now, is there anything written in the law where there could be emergency use for the levy to increase, to increase the budgets with the rapid growth that's happening right now?
So in the state of Idaho, there are maximum budget levy rates that are set for all the different taxing districts. We have very few taxing districts that are at their maximum levy rate. But they're also tied to the formula that the legislatures sent with the 3% increase. The only way that that can change is by voter approval, from what I understand. So if you have a small, say, cemetery district, and their budget just does not cover their expenses, they would put a question to the voters of their county, their district, to see if they would allow them to increase that. Otherwise, we're held within the constraints that the legislature has put out, as well as that 3%. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, but how do you like factor for all the necessary means for infrastructure, you know, with, you know, like all of the people that are moving into our state, and like how are we accounting for that? I mean, there's gotta be some kind of way to, you know, like lift that or adjust accordingly to that, like instead of just staying within the parameters, like.
Yes, part of that increase also includes new construction. I will say the new construction helps with some of the expenses, but you've probably heard at the state level, they're talking about extra dollars that are coming in for infrastructure, as you say. Roads and that kind of thing are a real challenge here in Idaho to keep up with. And so that's always something that the legislature is looking at trying to help as well.
You have roads, you have sewer, I mean, the whole thing that affects us. So it's tough to keep up with the growth that's going on right now. Anything else? Mayor, you want to go first? I saw your hand first.
Sure, I'll go first. I struggle sometimes to explain to folks that a 3% statutorily allowable increase in a budget is not the same thing as going home and saying, I paid X dollars last year, so they're gonna charge me 3% more of that this year. It doesn't calculate in the same way. How do you teach it when you're trying to help folks understand that? And maybe Penny, you might be fresh in your mind, that one, but I just, that was a hard one to teach. How do you teach that?
That's a good question. Maybe you can teach me how to teach people. I work mostly with the taxing districts, and we go from these formulas, and so they kind of say, okay, what do I have to do? And I kind of instruct them through. So I've never really had to instruct the public. And I think that's part of the challenge that we have as the county and city, as well as the legislature, is trying to help people understand, that we are trying to be fiscally responsible with their dollars.
And one thing to point out, the 3% is just on the property tax portion. There are, I think Penny pointed out, there are other sources of revenue that cities and counties and other taxing districts collect. So it's not like you're going to have to live with just 3% more money. Sales tax revenue sharing from the state averages between 6 and 7% increase it has over the last 5 or 6 years. So it's taking all of those different sources of income. But the one that I think everybody that's asking questions on is how much do I have to pay in my property tax? And that's where we have to look at it as a budget and look at all those other sources of revenue and try to do our best to make it fit. So the 3% is just the property tax portion of a budget, which is each entity would be different. I don't know what percentage of our budget is property tax versus other revenue exactly. I have an idea.
Our property tax is approximately 1/3 of our budget.
And then the rest comes from other types of fees that can go up more than 3%.
So if I play it on simple ways, if we did $1,000, I'm a city, I can set up a budget for $1,000. Every year I can increase that by 3%.
The property tax portion.
The property tax, just
the property, yeah, if you're talking 1,000 from property tax, and it's a little more than that because you can take new construction. So it's not just the 3%, I think it comes into roughly 5 to 6% if you factor in the new construction, because you're allowed to use your levy against the full value, well, 80% of the value now of the new construction. So when they say we can't live with 3%, it's not quite that restrictive. you know,
So you've talked almost 6 to 6.8 is a pretty good round number for the increase for the increase that most places are increasing their budgets by.
I think that was the revenue sharing, which is the share of the sales taxes that the state collects and passes to the counties. That funds a good portion of our budget.
Okay, so for simple things, we're 1,000, so we can add 5% this year. And then that goes against the tax. They take that in, and here's this budget of 1,006, and they have this much money, they break it out in a rate.
Yeah, plus the other sources for it.
Right, other sources, right.
It's not that simple, and that's where I think Penny's talking about how to make it sound simple.
I got told that I have to share this. So our actually county budget only went up 2.2%, the overall budget. And so sometimes when we take the extra revenue that we have, that's where we put into our infrastructure and the stuff like that. And we need the big projects, the millions of dollar projects that it takes to keep a county running.
Which we've chosen in the good years to take that and set it aside for future projects. I think you'll see several road construction projects over the next 2 years that we've been planning and saving for, planning ahead to do that. I don't know what area you live in, but you know the roads are getting quite crowded.
Very well.
Mr. Chairman, probably don't get asked this very often, but a lot of the property tax issues, as well as other tax issues, usually start in the House Tax and Revenue Committee. This is especially to the county commissioners, and Mayor, if you'd like to jump in on this, I appreciate it. What can we've heard about things with the legislature several times tonight, but what can the legislature start in the Revenue and Taxation Committee in conjunction with House leadership do to help these budgets and help this situation with the counties?
This will probably have difference of different opinions and different approaches. So when I speak, I'm just sharing mine. And these two good senators, and these are very good senators that represent our area, have heard this from me several times. The best way to get property tax relief, there are a lot of functions that are on the property tax that don't necessarily relate to property tax. Indigent health care has been one. Why should, we've had that when I was the chairman of the CAP fund. Why should I as a property owner be responsible for those bills? But the bills that would take those amounts, and we don't even have a problem with requiring the reduction out of our property tax base and replace them with a broader tax like sales tax, a general base tax, and it slowly decreases the burden of some of these services. Commissioner Walker passed out that list. 96% of what we do in a county budget is mandated. So we're basically trying to manage between mandated services and provide them the best we can. But the best way to get property tax relief is move that to a broader base tax, one of which is the sales tax. And I know that creates a lot of competition because you have 105 different personalities over there who want to have probably 120 different ways to spend it. So that's not simple either, but that's always been my approach. Let's get some of those services off the demand of the property tax, and then that forces that levy to go down and down, even your values go up.
So the 96% you mentioned is mandated, is that basically mandated from the legislature?
That's mandated by state statute. Whoever's responsible for passing state statute.
If we can maybe drill this back down to the county level, with that portion of the county operating budget, the portion of your property taxes that comes to we, the county commissioners, to function with, about 80% of that goes to law enforcement, okay, to protect our society. We're responsible, you notice on the list, for the sheriff's office budget. He's an elected official, but his budget comes through the county property tax. The jails, juvenile detention center, probation parole, prosecutor's office, public defender's office, the courts, the clerks, all of providing buildings for the courts, the clerks, and all of those functions, all of the buildings, the upkeep, the maintenance, all of those responsibilities, and then the operating expenses for the personnel within the portion of the county commissioner's budget, not the clerks, because the clerk's an elected official, the assessor's an elected official, the coroner's an elected official, the sheriff, and then the commissioners. And so when you look at what we're required by legislation to accomplish, and you look at what's left, you say, okay, so that's how you're paying a portion of your people. We run a really tight budget, and in a competitive job market, I know that the contractors, we're all facing the same issues. And I think the only way we're gonna solve these issues is to work collectively with you, the college that's providing this forum for us tonight, and help springboard students into the workforce across our community.
I think we'd like to be respectful of everyone's time, so Senator Cook, I think he would do a great job of explaining this new concept we're talking about the sales tax, and potentially using it to relieve some property tax. And so if anybody has any final comments, those of you who are sitting up here or in the audience, when he gets done, let's kind of move in that direction of closing it out tonight.
Okay, so it's important to know, as Senator Lynn said, it's a concept. This is a concept that we're asking for your feedback, okay? So there are 3 important steps to this new property tax idea or concept they're doing. And they've been talking about it for about a month, and that's all. So it's fairly new. But the first thing is for your primary residence, okay? For your primary residence, they remove all property tax, 0 property tax off of your primary residence. So if you were to grab your property tax bill and look at it, the only thing that would be left on there would be your levies and your bonds for your schools. Okay, the mosquito abatement, the city would be gone, the county would be gone, cemetery, all fire districts, all of that stuff would be gone. Okay, so tonight when you go home and look at it, you start scratching that out and you think, whoa, that's really cool. Okay, so here's the other part though, okay, you gotta think, you gotta pay the tax collector somehow, okay? So the next step is okay, now they're going to, the idea is that they will raise the sales tax to 7.95%. What it is right now, it's 0.66%. So that's a huge increase if you look at that, okay? But that covers the tax, so it goes off of the property tax, and as Commissioner Christensen said, it pushes it out to more people. So you have a broader base that is paying that, okay? And then the third part, and you've heard a lot about grocery tax. Well, this isn't grocery tax, but it's a part of it, is the grocery rebate, okay? Anybody that fills out a state income tax, you get a grocery rebate back. And so with this, they're going to, right now, if you're under 65, you get a grocery rebate of $100. If you've got, so if you've got you got a spouse and 2 kids, you should be getting a rebate of $400. If you're over 65, that is at $120. Okay, and so what they're raising, their idea with this concept with property tax is they would raise it $60. So now, if it's just you and your spouse, it's $160 each that you get back at the end of the year. Those are the 3 things that they're putting together in this new property tax concept. Did I get that right? Okay. we would love to hear what you think about that. I think we're gonna try and wrap this up, but we would love to hear whether you call us, email us, or we talk after, but we need to know what you think about that. If it's like, no way, don't do it, or, you know,
So it's basically a user tax. You're
Consumer.
increasing the sales tax to the highest in the country. The highest in the USA almost, I think, I think it's even higher in California.
as we looked at it, I don't believe that's.
7.95%. I think that's,
7.5.
you're up there with New York.
9.5.
7.95. It's definitely high.
So has any discussion been around eliminating the grocery tax?
Yes, lots of discussion, and if you follow the legislature, that's an issue that's being worked
I do.
every day, reducing or actually doing away with the grocery tax.
Doing away with it.
And so that's another discussion we'd be glad to have, and maybe if you want to stay after, we can talk about that. But it does take a little bit of time to explain, as far as the grocery tax, why some people are hesitant to pull that off. And it has to do with the money that's coming in as a result of that. So here's the bottom line with these broad-based taxes. Commissioner Christensen, he said this, but the idea is it's spread across, and many people don't realize the amount of people that come through our area that contribute. They would not contribute, but in a tax situation, they would be contributing more than they are now. But they do use our roads, they do use our fire, ambulance, all the items that we all use, they would use on a regular basis too. So the concept here is that would be spread out. They would also be contributing to the property tax. Question?
Actually, just clarification. So to make sure I understand this right, the way that the grocery tax rebate works is intended to pretty much eliminate what the actual citizens that are paying into the state income tax, or, the grocery tax, is to basically eliminate what they've been paying in grocery tax. So the only people left that are still ultimately paying that grocery tax are basically tourists and other people who aren't residents of Utah.
That is.
I mean, sorry, of Idaho, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Goodness gracious.
So
I've been here so many years and you think anyway, sorry.
So if you'd like numbers, I'll give you some numbers, you can write these down. It's estimated that about 12.7% of the tax revenue is associated with what we might call grocery tax. Total revenues brought in last year, this is what I was told this week, so I asked this question. 395 million came in as a result of that. The tax credit, which is really, it's a tax credit, credited 165 of that back. So that net is about 230, but there's some other items that come into play. So the net to the state was about 230 that went into the tax base. So that's the point where we need to talk about, are we collecting more than we should be? And how do we get that back to you or not cause those taxes? That's part of the issue with grocery tax. If we don't need that money or we're collecting more, then why are we doing that?
So also the grocery tax, it's only if you're using food stamps, you're not paying any tax, so they wouldn't get a rebate. They're not paying any tax. That's one other comment. On that property tax, that concept, okay, the concept, if the renters doesn't do anything for them, okay, if you have a cabin up in Island Park, and that's your secondary home or your third home or whatever you want to call it, your rental or Airbnb something, it's not your primary home, so you still owe property tax on that. It is only for your primary residence.
Homeowner's exemption.
I just have a quick question on the property tax. So do you have like a percentage of like what that would save, like just an annual like house? Like, you know, like how you're saying, hey, you can cross off all these lines because we're now gonna pay more sales tax. But do you have like a percentage like that you can tell us of like what it would actually save? So like if our
There's a worksheet that they're putting together, and I was hoping to get that, and we ran out of time. They changed the rate, which Commissioner Christensen reminded me, it's not 795, it's 775. little bit different.
Oh, I just Googled and the highest is in Washington, it's like 10.5.
Okay.
In California, I think it's like 10.25, so we wouldn't be close to that. so.
I would just point out too, I believe it's called the taxfoundation.org, and you can see how Idaho rates in all kinds of categories with the other states, as far as what percentage of, we do property, sales, income, and other taxes. And you can see how we relate to the other states. All states, as you know, some states don't have income, some don't have sales tax. They all collect their money in different ways. And right now, we're pretty even, not exactly like 25, 25, 25, and 25, but if you look in there, you'll see that. Taxfoundation.org, it's a little red book, and you can get it online. I looked at it today. It's very informative to help you understand that relationship.
So how do we get this workbook?
I'll put it on my Facebook, I'll keep it on your Facebook, or you can email us.
Put it in your weekly newsletters.
Oh,
Okay.
that's a great idea.
Yeah, so it'll be there, Senator Riggs is the one that's working on it, so he was hoping to have it done, but, so I would guess we would have that available in the middle of the week.
Awesome.
So we can put it on Facebook, we can get you a link to it on the Facebook. We'll figure out a way to do that.
So again, one of our objectives tonight is to help everybody have a better understanding of how this whole thing works. It's very complicated, and so we're just grateful that we have these experts and our elected officials here tonight to help us try to understand that. And could we just close out with maybe some comments from some of you tonight, if that'd be okay?
Could I just, because you did ask, how can you kind of do a guesstimate? And this is just a rough estimate. Say you pay let's keep the numbers around, $2,000 a year in property taxes on your home. I mean, that's a pretty basic home. If you look at that, say you're, where do you live? City of Idaho Falls?
No, I actually live in Bingham County.
Oh, I don't know what their levy rate is.
No, it's okay, you can tell me, I work in Idaho Falls. You can tell
Okay,
me.
because I won't raise your levy rate in promise. But say it's $2,000, you live in the city of Idaho Falls. Approximately 38% of that comes from the city, that would be replaced. It ends up being about 35% of us that would be left on the property tax for the school districts. What's the math there? 30%, that's, so it would be reduced from $2,000 to $650. Now, the important thing that we look at from a policy standpoint as commissioners is those dollars are replaced. So we're still collecting the same amount of dollars as if we would have collected in the property tax, but it's coming from a broader base. But that's how you can calculate what it would save you. Then you can go in backwards and say, well, for $350, $1,400 at the extra penny and a half, how much would I have to spend? I think if you get the extra grocery credit, that means you would be having to spend another $4,000 a year roughly to break even. So in concept, it looks pretty good, but we're always cautious with all of the details and the unintendeds. But I'll just make that my wrap up.
Okay. Should we start down here? Dustin, would you like to say anything to wrap up? Very good. Okay. Commissioner Walker.
There we go. Just a quick look on Google. The average individual adult in the state of Idaho spends $3,212 on groceries a year, annually. So you can then figure the grocery tax portion of that and do math to figure out what the actual savings for an individual or couple that live in a house that have the homeowner's exemption on it. This is new legislation, all the way in after I've read it, and
It's 42 pages.
yeah, well, I may be slow, but not patient. So appreciate all of you digging in and watching this and learning. And you're welcome to call me and ask more questions, and I'll help you find answers. Because it's a continually learning process, how this all balances out in our society.
I just want to thank you for putting this together. Out of
everyone over there in Boise. I know you two senators have been really proactive in reaching out to us as commissioners, always asking, trying to learn about the property tax issue. I know you're very passionate about it, so I appreciate you putting this together.
I don't really have anything to add, but again, I appreciate you putting this together, and I think I can speak for anybody. If all the county elected officials, if you have any questions, call us, come in. We're more than happy to speak with anybody and explain at least our part of the process. We're glad, I am for sure, glad to come share, explain about property tax, so don't be afraid.
I would just echo the sentiments of, we're glad to have them here and in our ball court. They really do want to do what's best for us. I would also say, I can't speak for all the taxing districts, but I can tell you that this is a year-long process for us every year, the budget in the county. We are very concerned about taxpayer dollars. We pay taxes as well. And so when you see your bills go up, we see our bills go up. And so this is something that is in our discussion and thoughts for every year, all year. So thank you.
Just to echo these officials, they are very, very smart. And I like to call them and run ideas by them and ask them where we're at with it, and they're more than welcome to. They're just so good to give you answers. And so if you have questions, call the county. They are smart people in the county, and they love to help you. Thank you.
All right, we done?
I think so.
Okay, thank you all.